Hello, everyone. Thank you for
Hi.
thank you for
Hi.
being here and sharing this wonderful celebration of Ken with us. 90 years, Ken? 50, I'd say. 50. You look, and you act more like 30, so what's a number? Um, we're so happy that we can do this virtually. It would be so much more fun to be all together. I want to tell you how we have organized. Ken and I are going to have a conversation. And then while we're having that conversation, if you want to write something in the chat, a message to Ken or a question for him or anything, just put it in the chat and Dan and Sally will be monitoring the chat. And then we'll let them share what they see there. So, um, yeah, let's get going. Alex, do you want to spotlight Ken and me? Hello, Ken.
Yeah. Hi. Well,
Wow.
look, I'm totally daunted by this. It's I've got no practice of doing a thing like this for one thing, but it's like a near-death experience as I watch the screen, like watching your whole life pass before you, like everything. Like suddenly there are these people I've known, loved, cared for, talked with, been inspired by, all just there all at once. It's totally daunting.
I think there's something coming over your shoulder, Ken.
Oh my word.
Thank you,
Um,
Lisa.
Surprise from your friends on the screen. They wanted to wish you, Dad.
it's unbelievable.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
And here's their gift. And I will let you
Oh.
celebrate. Happy 90, Dad. Don't forget to blow out your candle.
Perfect timing.
Yes,
Perfect.
they'll light me a fire. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you,
All right,
thank you.
bye, you guys.
Bye, Lisa. Thank you. She's the
I,
partner in
I wondered
crime.
how you were going to do this cake business. I said, well, how can you have, cake?
Too
But
bad
you
we
did
can't
it.
share it with you. It looks good.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ken, let me ask you some questions and sort of comb through the 90 years. Maybe not all of them, all right?
Yeah, yeah.
So first, I I'm really curious what you would attribute your long, healthy life to. I mean, of course, the right answer is relationality, being in relation with others, right? But what's the answer that you have?
But the obvious thing is genetics. I
Yeah.
have two grandmothers who lived over 100.
Really?
Yeah, so I feel really blessed with that. And you've taken away really my main reason. I just think somehow being spirited, loved, inspired by other people, um, it just doesn't take much. It just creates life. You know, people come up with ideas and dialogues, and suddenly there's something new to do. There's something that's possible. Wouldn't that be fascinating? Or turn in discussion to a new idea. That's never been explored. Why don't we open that up? So it's like this continuous sense of discovery, of picking up, oh, that's so curious, that's so fascinating, that's so possible. And that's mainly comes up in the process of relating. And I cannot, separate myself out from that.
Yeah.
I got to include humor. I mean, it's really important as a piece of it.
Yeah.
Love and humor will take you a long way in life.
Absolutely. I'm thinking that probably everyone who's here on this Zoom call resonates with that, what you just described of like, oh, wow, that's a good idea. Let's explore that. Because I remember so many years ago just having a conversation with you and, you know, talking about some ideas and they were just ideas that I didn't think much of. I thought, oh, this is how I like to talk about this. And you said, oh, tell me more. Let's do this. And, it turned into be a book between us that we wrote. So, and that's the way you operate. You just spark onto something and you make it bigger than maybe what people think it is in the first place. That's a gift that you
Well,
give.
I think, yeah, and it's often because I think sometimes hiding in what seems to be naive or offhand is something that's really important. I mean, my general feeling is that whatever we say, whatever coherent thesis that we develop, underneath that is probably something which is going to trip it up. Here, for example, take positivism and the very notion of objectivity. We're not going to be subjective like individual. We're going to be objective. Now that really sounds fabulous, no neutral, objective. But when you get down to what's objective, it is the multiplication of subjectivities. It's like when you get a lot of people to agree, that's objective.
Right,
And
right.
it's just hidden there as this gem
Yeah.
that you push it a little bit and suddenly objectivity goes out the window and it's fascinating.
That's a real gift, though. I think that you can see that you can dig and find those gems. So
Well,
let
I
me
think
ask
we
you.
all have them. It's just a matter of
Yeah,
taking the something that seems so clear and just pushing it a little bit.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah, yeah. But some people give up sooner, so you don't give up, and I think that
Well,
that's
yeah, I know it. Well, you give up because you're treated as silly or I don't want to hear this, or it gets in the way. It's frustrating for other people when you start asking those questions.
mm, mm,
Um, it's like the old ethnomethodology cases. If you raise a question about the obvious, like you have a discussion with somebody and they say, I have a flat tire, and you say, what do you mean by flat tire? And they say, well, go to hell.
yeah, right, right.
Yeah, so you push it, and you always run into problems. But how fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, to have that fascination with the ordinary, with
yeah, yeah.
daily life, and to explore and interrogate that. Tell me, of all your achievements in all that time, both personal and professional, not just professional. What are you most proud of? I know that's probably a hard question, maybe not most, but just what comes to your mind?
The, the, I, the difficulty for me, right, just offhand, um, I have learned so much since I was a kid about not being proud of anything. It's hard for me to just
Yeah.
like, well, I'm proud of it's like I just hard. I push me a little bit and I can probably find it. It
Well,
If
okay, let
you
me
ask
ask
me
you
about
let
what
me
I'm
ask a
happy
different.
about, it's a little easier for me to say.
Okay, all right.
Um, and there are things that are not Taos related of having a family, which has forgiven me kind of. We had a family party the other night, and my message in some way to them was that four of my five children were there, was thank you for being here and giving me a chance now to be a father I've always wanted to be,
Mm,
because I have spent so much time devoted to the profession, so much time on the road, so much time in books and so on, and with people that I do not feel worthy of their love for me. So I had to kind of get that off my chest and thank them for just being there and giving me that chance now. So yeah, I and I guess I'm also grateful. I mean, for example, you and the others who've helped to create Taos and to keep it running. I mean, I'm proud of it in a way, but I'm also, wow, we did this. I mean, we just again out of laughter
Mhm.
and listening to ideas, suddenly now we create an institute, and then we say, well, why not we do X or Y? Wouldn't that be fun? I am enormously happy, for example, about the creation of World Share Books
Mhm.
along the way, because that was just an idea. It sort of came up, turned it over, and then it became what, almost 100 books going out in 13 languages to thousands of people,
Yeah.
free of charge. I mean, we just made it up. And there it is. And I feel really good about that.
Yeah.
I I am really happy with something that happened in the American Psychological Association. Um, if you look at qualitative methods, uh, to me, it's not the fact that they're quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative methods represent is multiplicity or pluralism, because those methods come from different parts of the world. They come with different ontologies, epistemologies, and values. So if you open up qualitative methods, what you've done is really open up to us the whole pluralism of possibilities, which is the essence of constructionism. So to me, it's like turning psychology into a constructionist orientation of pluralism. So anyway, I worked with two others for 10 years, gathering names, petitions, meeting, being turned down, and so on. And finally, after 10 years of getting that into the association, so it's now accepted, has its own division, has a journal. In fact, the journal just now became more popular than I think any but one journal in the field.
Wow.
Just boom.
Wow.
So I'm happy. I'm just really,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'm proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that one other sort of small thing, I, which kind of goes back to the modernist roots of counting. You know, I've been opposed to so many ways of counting, and so, but there it is. And so the number of citations that you've had.
Yeah.
So suddenly last year, I get this metric from some new company that's putting all the citations in the whole world together, all the journals. And this is in the social sciences.
Mhm.
And for my lifetime achievement, I am in the upper half of the first percent
Wow.
of
Wow.
it was like, all right, all those people who I've struggled against, read that.
Yeah, that's quite
But
an accomplishment.
I was just dumbfounded,
Yeah.
dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just amazing to me.
I mean, that's a measure of both how much you've written as well as how
It
many
is,
people
yeah,
have read and
yeah.
accessed.
It's a matter of how much and also how much you read, and also it has to do with the quality of the journals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Excellent.
it's
Congratulations.
going to be
That's really quite an
anyway.
honor. Yeah.
That was the one metric,
Yeah.
and that one I could tell my father about.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to amend the question and say, okay, you don't have to say what you're most proud of, but what would your mother say? What would your father say? What would Mary say if she were here? Because that's an easier question to answer.
Yeah. Let me go back to Mary a minute because
Yeah.
in terms of being fortunate to be with you and all, I had more than 50 years of absolute good fortune to be have her as my closest relationship. It was like it's just absolute everyday inspiration and play, part of the part of what we do, and I infinite value to my life, and I think everyone I've come in contact with because she's always been a part of that.
Uh, I don't know, Dora. is on the screen. Hi, Dora. Um, so Alex, could you spotlight me and Ken again? I don't know how that happened. Okay. Oh, now you're on the other side of my screen. Now I have to look this way. Yes, I know that. I mean, Mary was a kind of a muse for you in many ways, right?
Yeah, in many ways. I mean, dinners were like small seminars
Hmm.
until after the second glass of wine, then they became
And
more.
they were sloppy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, well, let me ask you, I know you've been working on a memoir that you're writing,
yeah,
and in that memoir, you're braiding together both your personal and professional life with kind of the shifts in culture, like the
yeah.
60s, the 70s, all of this. So, you've been thinking a lot about your life and all of these issues, and I'm just curious that for maybe you to share some, like what period of your life, this is probably going to be difficult for you to answer, but what period of your life do you feel has been the most creative?
Yeah, that is difficult to answer. Well, let me just say a little bit about the book, just to preface
Just
that.
to
I
deflect
mean,
from the question.
what I feel like is that this last 50 years and particularly from the 60s to the 90s in academic life was perhaps the most unsettling, groundbreaking period of intellectual life since basically the Enlightenment. I mean, it just changed everything. And it really needed to be talked about, that whole development. Why was that? Why did it take place? What were the major currents of that? Why is it so significant? And to make that available for a broader audience, so it's partly an intellectual period I'm really concerned with.
Mhm.
And then to make it a little bit more sort of personal, to give it some grounding, so that you don't see it as just a set of abstractions moving across. So you can see there are a lot of personal stories involved with that. It's ups and downs that really, and some fun. Um, and then also to understand that in terms of the cultural conditions, which made it possible and which invited it. So it's trying to weave these together in some way, and it's really fascinating to write. Um, Certainly that period of the 1970s and 80s, I think when these ideas kept popping out, popping out of history of science, sociology of knowledge, literary theory, critical theory, and so on, just varieties coming up from the woodwork of this dialogue among everything. Um, it it was creative in part because you found yourself, you know, continuously opening doors, and something would be there, and then you sort of add to it. And so my feeling about social construction, in some way, in terms of what I've been writing, is less creative in that sense. So, but it's after the dialogues. They're just trying to put together this, trying to say, well, look, how can we see this as part of a whole, this tapestry? What would bring it together? And that for me was social construction. Now
Mhm.
that part is not so creative except in terms of weaving.
Mhm.
The creative part comes somewhat prior, but so I don't look at that in itself as the creative piece. Um, the original, and also that when I first got into trouble with all this writing social psychology as history in the 70s,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that was a bombshell in terms of the field, but I didn't feel it was so creative as taking one of these ideas and pushing it
Yeah.
as if there is social change, which everyone would agree to, and you push that, then there are no universals.
Mhm.
So all this whole psychology of universals gets put on its ear. Um, I think strangely enough, the if I look at anything that was importantly creative in my life, I think it would be the relational turn,
Mhm.
because that was not presaged anywhere in my reading. That it became a logical necessity. If we were going to talk about relationships, how are we going to conceptualize them? And what we had done, for one, is there was the ideology of individualism you wanted to get away from. So that just struck that off. Post-structuralism, or which post-structuralism turned out to be, begins to question the very idea of a mental process. So if you look at mental process as a construction, reason as a construction, motivation as a construction, there's nothing there to as substance, then that takes that off the table as the basis of relationship. And then you're left with sociology, which basically takes relationship for granted.
Yeah.
So then you say, well, what would be a possibility there? And and really it came out of discussions with John Schotter how to do that, because he was playing around with a sociological concept early
Mhm.
of joint action. That wasn't quite it, but it was almost.
Yeah.
It was just almost, and just to turn it on its edge. And then that became relational theory, where you start off with a process
Yeah.
prior to the persons. And that was like, wow, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was a big wow moment.
So, you mentioned those 70s, 80s, the sort of exciting times, and your piece, social psychology is history. They're exciting times, but also I know as you were living through them, they were kind of brutal. I mean, there was,
Yeah.
the ideology wars, maybe we could identify it as. But somewhere in your trajectory, you, I would say you stopped being the fighter against other ideas and you became more the charmer, you know, to charm the opposition and somehow so that you end up in a constructionist and in a relational world with not this is bad or wrong and this is, social construction is right
Yeah.
and individualism is wrong, or what have you.
Yeah.
Um, how did you come to that kind of turn? Because academia, we know, can be a very cruel place,
Yeah.
where, you have to beat people up, to get your ideas across.
Yeah, there was a fair amount of brutality there for a number of years. A lot depends on who's attacking you, or at least the way they criticize you, or the way they react. And, and particularly philosophers are the most brutal in the way they attack you. The first time I saw John Schotter in a public appearance, it was in England. Someone said, "This is pure rubbish." You know, and Karl Popper says, "You are the enemy," in front of a group of people, and so on. They get quite brutal.
Yeah.
Um, where I had to begin to really to sort of listen was once, it was a meeting, was largely a Jewish group, and it was about the Holocaust and how could I look at that as a construction,
Mm.
and what are the ethics of looking at it as a construction. Now there, the criticism was a bit hostile, but I had to, I've got to live through their concern. I can't just do my logical thing, which I could, but it's how am I to accommodate that? How let me feel that in such a way that I can somehow move with it. So that was a really important turning point. Now, the other part is that becomes is to say, look, every critique of the constructionist orientation is itself a construction, which is legitimate in its own terms. So don't fight against those. Try to understand their legitimacy and what it is they do.
Yeah.
So then, when people are saying, "Why are you not fighting this? Are you given up?" No, it's a
Gotten
matter.
old.
Um, yeah, it's a matter of trying to incorporate and deal with the legitimacy and say, well, all right, what do we get from this? Let's listen. And now I must admit that the I've used this once in probably a naughty way. There was an Australian philosopher who wrote a whole book condemning all this, but it was all on metaphysical grounds and was highly abstract, highly complicated, and so on. And I'm not going to get into all this. It would take me hours and hours to unpack everything that she was. I had to respond in the literature. I mean, they asked for a response.
Mhm.
And I'm just not going to spend the hours working through her metaphysics. I mean, I'm primarily a pragmatist, and if you bog me down with the philosopher's jargon, which it is built within the confines of the philosophic community, it's so I just said, look, this is crazy for me to be fighting this. This is a construction. And you can construct it in whatever way you want, but it's not a foundational. We're not talking about foundations here. And it saved me hours and hours.
Yeah. I also, so in this kind of moving, I mean, that sort of foreshadows, as you just described, treating different paradigms, different ideas in this curious way, becoming curious about them and not demonizing them.
Yeah,
That sort of becomes a precursor then to thinking about dealing with difference, with conflict, and moving toward, how do you transform people who have very, very different belief systems and not end up, beating each other up, but rather create the conditions where they can be in conversation and perhaps create something new together.
yeah,
Even if
really.
not,
That's absolute parallel with what
yeah,
I'm saying.
even if not an agreement isn't the answer. It's really just, forging perhaps some new understanding of the differences and agreeing to disagree, perhaps. But it is a whole different approach to dealing with difference than, conflict resolution, for example.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to me that at least understanding the legitimacy with its own terms
Yeah,
is the first step towards avoiding mutual annihilation.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, tell us a little bit about your stepping into the world of performance, and where's that come from? I think the answer there might be Mary, but
Well, a little bit it is. I
yeah,
mean,
okay,
certainly yes, she's absolutely had that effect on me. There was a way in which it conjoined because there was a point fairly early in constructionism, where you begin to see that academic writing itself is a relationship, is a way of relating, and it's a very bad one. So academic writing is hierarchical. It distances you from the reader. It tries to make oneself dominant.
hmm,
You learn from me. I have the answers. It's a terrible form of writing. So then the question is, how else could we write?
hmm,
And so you start playing with that. Well, how else you could write very rapidly becomes why is writing privileged
Mm.
itself? Why not theater, for example? And this, of course, is we become very involved with the East Side Institute and this whole thing, performing the world.
Yeah.
So once you get into performance, then why not build that into the way you actually present things? So that's when Mary becomes more daring than me.
Yeah.
I developed a series of vignettes that I'd used. It was sort of Wittgensteinian. The vignettes will tell you more and more powerful way than words will.
Mhm.
But then she started wearing boas and doing striptease with smoking a cigar. I was like, she was just out there, just
I
pushing
remember.
me to keep,
Hmm.
keep going, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So yeah, that becomes art forms, that becomes dance. I just worked last month with a ballet group in Norway to try to
mm,
create some of these ideas in dance.
nice. Nice.
Uh, and
Nice.
it is great fun. It's great fun, the whole movement. And that was the other thing. It's a whole arts-based research movement,
Right.
which is now, becoming more and more powerful. And it just opens up that space even further.
Yeah. Yeah. That's become very popular, and it sort of opens the doors for younger scholars, to really play in different ways of expressing the
Yeah,
work they
yeah,
want to express.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I see you've got a little painting there behind you. That's the
Yeah.
open door.
Yeah, yeah, that's an unfinished painting, obviously, but yeah. Trying to follow in your footsteps, Ken, that's all.
Uh,
Um, Let me ask you, of course you will be remembered in the history of psychology. But if you had to a choice to pick the one thing you would be remembered for, what would you choose?
Look, I don't want to know whether I want to play with that question so much because generally people are not remembered. The the point of because psychology, like other academic professions, is competition, and competition means always being at the new. So whatever was old, you keep trying to say, well, that's old because now I'm the cutting edge. And very rapidly people disappear into history.
But there are always the classics, Schauder said, Gergen said.
Well, what will happen is, and it's already pretty much happened, is that social psychology as history already got there.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, it's like it's just I continue to get requests for copies of that. It's like Ash's conformity experiment. You don't doesn't matter what else he did in life, he
Yeah,
did the conformity experiment.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that just gets lodged there.
yeah.
The problem with a lot of the social construction, because I'd like to understand that it changes, it gets out from under control of positivism. That was the main thing.
Mhm.
It doesn't say eliminate everything. It just says no longer is that control. And that I think we've pretty much done that as I
Mhm.
look at the field, but nobody remembers it as being social construction. It's like
Mm.
it's just back there
Mhm.
as a consciousness without content,
Yeah,
I'd say.
yeah.
Um, I'd like it if the relational would be remembered, but the problem with the relational, it is non-psychological.
Maybe you need to be remembered in different disciplines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you one more thing, and then we can move on to other aspects of today's celebration. Do you have any advice for young scholars and practitioners?
Um, Well, in terms of I don't know about advice, but to me, and you know this from other things I've said, I feel like humanity's reached this brink of disaster. We're just on the edge of going over, where it will just simply decline. So that the point is somehow whether you come out of the professional work or you come out of academics, it's got to be devoted to those issues.
Mhm.
Got to be centerful. And that was the whole reason for this, trying to move research from observing and reporting into creating the world, a kind of world making instead of reporting. It's all of that. That's what all that writing was about.
Yeah.
So it's how to do that, how to be at the forefront of that, because in particularly the young are the future, and you've got a lot of problems in the way. You've got people in the way. You've got traditions in the way. So it's going to be hard. And now the difficulty of one of those traditions, if you go into scholarship, the very form of competition we have of publish or perish is already working against it.
Mhm.
Say, look, you can go out and do action research all you want, but if you don't get publications, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can go out and join, you can use all of your skills, all of your resources to make change, but if it doesn't end up being somehow in the Journal of Public Personality and Social Ecology, it doesn't count. And it's functioning against you to do anything. And the same with once you get into the work world, it's all about profit.
Yeah.
If you're not making profit, it's worthless. So you've got a huge problems and it's imperative work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to personally thank you for being in my life and
My pleasure.
being my friend, my colleague, sharing so much over all these years. Um, Thank you.
You've been a wonderful ride.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Just beginning.
Yeah. 90 more years.
Just beginning.
You're like the Energizer Bunny. You'll never stop. Okay, so thank you, and thank you for this conversation. I wish we had more time because I had a lot of other things I wanted to get you to answer and make.
I'm a bit relieved you can't ask all the
I
questions.
know that the other ones were maybe a little more risque, but so Dan and Sally, do you want to share the chat and perhaps your own thoughts with us?
Sure. One of the first things I was thinking is, Ken, you did a great job answering those questions. Sheila, those were not exactly easy questions. Okay. So thanks for being
I
so
was just
cool
getting back at him for all these years.
under pressure. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little remembrance from a time that we were at a conference, and Ken, we had a few minutes, Dan and I had a few minutes to sit down with you. And I think we were probably talking about dissertations and some of our dissertations. And we were talking about some of our ideas. And you turned to us and you said, wow, like you guys really use this stuff? And we were just, and so while every comment on here has been about motivation, we would just like to add how motivated we were to continue. And even to today, we'll say, how can we use this stuff? How can we take it further? How can we create solutions or different ways of going forward using this stuff? Sometimes, we'll say, we'll be critical and say, well, that stuff doesn't work, but then we reclaim it. So I wanted to say thanks for the motivation and the constant encouragement. And so we hear that voice, your voice, over and over especially when we're stuck.
Yeah. Well, I say just that, look, when you use this stuff, it's like a bit of a wedding in a way. I mean, we've conjoined in some way, we become something together. and I feel really absorbed in what you do. And watching them becomes like, wow, did you do that? And how did you do that? And how fascinating. And I feel just carried with it. Anyway, so thank you.
Hmm.
You know that I want to pick up on Sheila referred to you as the Energizer Bunny. And so we've talked a bit about, well, in this conversation about the past and your recollections and what's happened. But with your future forming metaphor that you're so excited about, I guess I'm wondering if given the situation of, as you described it, trying to avoid mutual annihilation in our world, could you, like, in the next 10 years of your work, could you give us some indications or point us into some directions on things that we might do to deal with this tribalism that seems to be rampant everywhere? What kinds of thoughts do you have about how we might go forward as a world uh, with a chance of escaping disaster?
Yeah, it's a huge question, but let me just give you one answer. What I have really been interested in the last few years is the formation of dialogues that and what I'll call the scaffolding of things. I, I I'm not real happy with the function of let's say dialogue as simply, oh, look, we can bring each other together and we can understand each other, because again the world continues to move, and what we've said today may not be that way tomorrow, and it doesn't take very much for me, even though I like you, if you've said X, Y, or Z to me, I'll forget that you like me, and I'll the world continues to move. But how can we set up scaffolds for dialogue which will continue to bring us together?
Mm.
And this comes out of education for me, but that's where the proving ground for this is. That if we've got classrooms which are set up as competition, then that's a scaffold. We're all going to compete for the grades, and we're going to grade on a curve, and some of you are going to be great, some of you are going to be terrible. It's a disaster. It's a disaster for the students, it's a disaster for the culture, because you never learn how to relate in ways out of that. But it's a scaffold. If you could change this from competition to some other form of dialogue, so that you could have, let's say, a collaborative classroom, joint projects, all right, which is possible. You just really have to remove competition as your baseline for how we relate. Similarly, and this is more difficult, is when you get into politics.
Mm.
The politics of partyism is killing us. Because once you set a scaffold up as me against you, the common good goes out the window. And people start doing awful things to each other, as we've just seen. How can we change the scaffold of governance? And I say that's harder because it's easier in everyday life. Once you go up the ladder to governance, once you go into competition among organizations, and once you go into global competition, which is really killing us, nation against nation, each for their own interest. If that's the nature of our form of relating, then we're dead. But I'm just bringing this up as one form of scaffold. It's how to think of setting the conditions under which we talk, as opposed to being so concerned about the talk itself, which will grow out of those conditions.
All right. Thank you for that.
Short answer.
Yeah. One other comment, Sheila. Some of the messages are suggesting that we be sure to sing happy birthday. And so I just that might be part of the plan already, but it's being supported by the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I guess what we'll do is we'll save the chat so that Ken, you can
Yeah.
read at your leisure all these messages, but just look at all these people here who are here for you.
I'm amazed and overwhelmed. I really am.
Yeah. Well, you are loved. So,
So much emotional. I just move across the stream.
yeah.
Like,
Um, Let me invite Emerson Hazara to join us now. And
Yeah,
there you
thank you,
are.
Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. I think we are having a very important celebration today. I wish we could be together face to face in a party. And then trying to meet myself in this party, I wanna make a toast. I wanna make a toast. And I want to read this message to Ken and all of you in my name, in the name of the board. Dear colleagues and friends, it is with immense joy that we gather today to celebrate the 90th birthday of Ken, a remarkable man who has devoted his life to deepening our understanding of human relationships. His work reminds us that the bonds we nurture not only shape our identities, but also imbue our lives with meaning. For me personally, Ken's ideas on social construction initially felt like an epistemological earthquake. Over time, however, they became a guiding framework, enable me to engage with the world in a coherent and meaningful way. More importantly, they introduced me to a community, to this community, that has given me a profound sense of belonging, security, and inspiration. Thank you, Ken. As Ken once so beautifully expressed it, in the beginning is the relationship. And identities are never individual. Each is suspended in an array of situated relationships. These ideas constitute the heart of Ken's life and contributions, in my point of view. In celebrating his 90 years, we also honor decades of connections, of relationships that he has formed with people across the globe. This is Ken's birthday, but a celebration of each and every one of us. Ken hasn't just taught us about the importance of relationship. He has embodied these values through his generosity, wisdom, and unwavering inspiration. So today, we raise our glasses to a true master whose legacy will continue to light our path. Let us carry forward the profound lessons he has shared with us. To your health, Ken, and to many more years of inspiration. Cheers.
you're too
Thank you, Ken.
awesome. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
And to keep the celebration alive into this new year, I would like to invite my dear friend Luke to share a special invitation with all of you. Luke?
Yeah, thank you. So these are the Netherlands, you know. It's like a song contest, you know, when we are having these points. So happy birthday, Ken. Congratulations. And I think Lisa is here. You're Lisa? No, 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 I'm just joking. But we have a present for you. Uh, will show it. It's a box. And we talked about the present, and you also gave some suggestions, Ken, about, well, what would be a nice present to give you. And then we were talking about, well, presents at the age of 90. What do you wish anymore, you know? I've been in your house, so I think there are many things already in your house. So we were thinking about perhaps this would be a good idea for a present. we call it a gift of action. So how great would it be when all people who are joining this party today or who are not today here present would think about an action the coming year to celebrate your birthday the whole year, to to invite other people to be active and to do something which has to do with social construction. So we would think about what could it be. So it could be perhaps writing an article or a blog. It could be perhaps translating your book, The Relational Imperative, which is a bigger task. It could be perhaps a workshop, or perhaps you will have a lunch with other people and talk about social construction. Perhaps you're good looking and you want to make a video about social construction, or perhaps you're hungry and you are perhaps organizing a dinner talk about social construction and actions. The most important thing is perhaps you find other people to co-create an action to, to bring social construction even more into life. That's what we wish for you. And to make it more concrete, Celiana's book and Sheila's book, Design Thinking and Social Construction, we, the Netherlands, translated the book into Dutch. This is not a book, but it's just a symbolic gift. So the 13th of January, we are organizing a party in the Netherlands for people who are interested in social construction, but also in the book, to spread also social construction more in the Netherlands. Perhaps other people have even more creative ideas. It could also be a cooking party and then talk about social construction. So please, all friends today and people also who are not present today, feel invited to co-create with other people an activity the coming year in expressing social construction. And then we can use Tao's comments to let all people know what we are creating together. So feel invited for this. That's our gift for you, Ken. Happy birthday again.
Thank you. Look, that in fact, if people took action of any kind, or all those that would be a great present. It really would.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it would be great. And Salia will make it more concrete, I think.
Yeah.
So I give the word to Salia.
Thank you, Luke. Ken, before I make it more concrete, I have to personally thank you for being in a journey that you may or may not know that you've been with me. I came to this country in 1998, and one of your books and Sheila's books was one of the few that I was introduced to and caught up in, and I'm still caught up in this notion of social construction and relational practices and what it means for everyday life and living. So thank you for that gift. Thank you for being the person that you are, as I remember meeting you, and embodying that, these not ideas as abstractions, but in everyday interactions. And in inviting Luke, Emerson, and myself to be in this new leadership position at the Taos Institute, I take this call very seriously, the relational turn. What does it mean for all of us to be in a relational turn? And that's where I want to invite everybody in this position of arriving with a vision of collective participation. Luke's invitation as action, as gifts to Ken, we invite all of you to start playing and thinking and performing in small and big ways events that you would like to share with all of us as gifts for Ken's 90th year, but also as a way of continuing to live and play with these ideas and moving them out. And so in light of that, we have set up what's called, let me just share my window here. Are you seeing my window?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, great. It's called Ken Gergen's 90th birthday, but we have this little icon text that says events. And if you go under events, we can create a calendar of more events. And the calendar is what we are going to populate as gifts, as the gifts that Luke was talking of. Even if it is a lunch with your close dear ones and you want to put it there, it is a way to show us what's happening in the world. But you can also take pictures and share it in the post and continue to engage the conversation in the celebration lounge. A way of being in action and dialogue and reflection. There is no right way. It's all performative. It's all to make up this next turn that we're talking of. And as you get ideas and as you want to share an event, the best way is to send an email to info@Taos Institute, our usual info email. And you can CC me, but I will get it either ways. And we will take it and post it on the calendar because not everybody has access to the calendar, but you can make an event. And in that way, in that spirit, we kind of contagiously continue inspiring each other, but also moving the world forward. And in the spirit of that, to make it more concrete, December 2025, a year from now, I'm going to be hosting a symposium at Mercy University, which is where I teach. And it is going to be a live event that I'm hoping that somebody else who wants to hold a live event locally at their university or their location, wherever it is, we can coordinate and play and how to do it through teleconferencing. So that's my invitation to inspire you to reach out to me. And if it gets really impossibly big, then we'll figure it out. But that's the invitation. And with that action, I want to say happy birthday, Ken. Thank you for bringing us together.
Thank you so much, Sally Hobb.
Thank you.
Creative as usual. Thank you. Amazing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Sheila, for hosting this wonderful conversation with Ken. Let's all sing happy birthday.
Thanks.
In your own language. It's going to be a cacophony. So pace yourselves and unmute. Let's all unmute.
Can we also unspotlight so we can see everybody?
Yeah.
And we can tell who's not singing, you know.
And Luke, you can kick us off, or anybody who's
Yes,
got
I
the
can
voice
kick. I can.
who
I
wants to
was a
kick us off.
teacher, so I was a primary school teacher and a kindergarten teacher. So I think I can do this. So again, let's finish this with a nice song. I count till 3, I think, and then we sing as loud as possible that Ken can hear us. You know. So 1, 2, 3.
Happy
birthday
to
you.
you.
Happy birthday
Hooray!
Come on.
Hip, hip, hooray! That was great. Thank you.
That was awful.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. You should do it
Thank
more
you,
often, I
everyone,
think.
for being here with us today. And Ken, we hope you have a fabulous year forward and populated with everybody here's actions posted on the calendar or not. Just join in and do good things.
Yeah. Thank you so
Si
much.
hacemos
I will
acciones que
never be the
pongamos en
same
el
again.
calendario, ¿no? Y que
Really,
estemos
it's
con...
fantastic. Oh, I'm moved, deeply moved. Thank you all.
Como no estaba silenciado, me escuché.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Birthday.
Bye-bye. See you soon all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Ken.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye, Ken. Happy
Uh,
birthday.
Bye-bye, Ken.
Bye, Ken.
Bye-bye, Ken. I hug you.
We do love you.
Wow.